and you're going to see, which is why I'm so excited. But today's presentation, it's going to be about, I want it to be less about the hype, which is real. Like it's there, like the AI system that I'm going to show you, it's real. It's very cheap. You're probably already using it. It's called Claude. But like the way you use it and the strategic fundamentals, they make all the freaking difference in the world. So I know the AI gives us like dopamine hits, and then people want to go out and try it and then build things. And that's great. I'm like that as well. But if we don't fix a few fundamental things, and if those things aren't in place, we're going to get in trouble. So all this time, for the past 3 minutes, I've been meaning to share my screen, but because I am a man, I can't do two things at the same time. And I also a few people. So let me see who's in here. Oh yeah, people are coming in. What's up? Yeah, I'm going to just open the chat. Yeah, drop in where you guys are calling in from. It's always fun to see. Irene, good to see you. What's up? Long time no see. Of course, we haven't had webinars.
Hey, good to see you.
Even though I didn't put AI in the title of this presentation, a lot of it is going to be about AI and how that is completely reshaping the way that we are doing strategy and execution. So what I want to give you guys today is why B2B marketing plans die. As I said, I've done about 27 deep dives over the past 7 years only, and a lot more before that, but like 27 official ones where I was actually wearing the hat officially as a consultant, as an advisor. And it's no secret, many of these worked, and some of the plans died when it came to execution. And for somebody who's doing this on a regular basis, it's like always one of the biggest questions. Like, how can I make this thing work? How can I align execution and strategy so that the strategy actually gets executed? So this is the plan for today. And well, the common headache for people is that, yeah, they've built a great product, but growth is not working. And everybody makes a plan. So everybody who's even with like a marketing team of 0, sales leaders and CEOs and founders, they'll still make some sort of a marketing plan, but it's usually not adequate. And then the whole thing just falls apart. And we don't want that to happen. And what I found is usually because people start to blame the agency, the marketers, the hires, even the process. And that might be true. All of those might be true. But what I found is that very often it's the whole system that needs to be fixed. And by the whole system, I mean, how do we actually do growth? How do we do this whole thing of taking our product or service offering to market? And that includes sales, that includes marketing, that includes the trade shows, that includes the random stuff that we try, that includes everything. And it's never going to be a clean-cut, beautiful thing. It's always going to be messy, but even messy systems can work. But when it doesn't work, I still suspect that it's a problem at the level of the systems, so of the entire thing. How I arrived at this conclusion is that, as I said, I've done like 27 of these journeys, and they all take about 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes even more. Multiple deep dives, multiple talking to customers. Sometimes we had real nice successes. So a couple of clients we worked with, 2 to be exact. We worked for about 2 years together. They made it to the European list of fastest growing European companies. That's done by the Financial Times every year. So they got 2 of our clients got on that list. Before I show you the AI side of it, I want to talk to you about like the 3 things that I distilled down on why these plans and why these entire systems fail. So when it comes to planning, problem number 1 is there's not enough depth. And you can guess what this is about. So it's superficial research. It results in generic messaging. People are very often like not willing to go narrow enough with the ICP. And what ends up happening is if you don't go deep enough, you're going to be generic. No alignment. Alignment happens on multiple levels. It's not just an alignment thing out there, but what's alignment about? Well, marketing has to be aligned with all the other functions that are present in go-to-market. And the plan has to also adhere to those things. Even more importantly, what's not part of planning very often is that the alignment of what success looks like, even what marketing's function is supposed to be, is usually an afterthought. So people may go to market plans, marketing plans, sales plans, and you talk to executives and nobody is in understanding about what marketing is supposed to be doing. Okay, so a lot of the companies we work with, they have tiny little marketing teams, not like 15-person marketing teams with huge budgets. No, we're talking about like 0 to 5 marketers or 1 to 5 marketers. Very often marketing is, it's at the kids' table. And you ask a couple of executives, hey, what are you expecting from marketing? And one executive, like one COO, will tell you, well, I want them to, produce money and I want everything to be attributable. And sales might tell you, I want them to produce leads. And then somebody else, the CEO, is like, we need visibility. So I want marketing to do pretty stuff and get us out there and spread our message. And then these three things are, they coexist and they can be aligned, but they're not usually aligned. And when things start to slow down and when things start to go wrong, that's when these misalignments really take shape. And people are surprised that, hey, we're not aligned on metrics, but not even at a higher level. We are in misunderstanding about what the hell this department is supposed to be doing. And the third thing that often kills even good plans is when execution is an afterthought, meaning who does what. Susie's going to do social media. Jamie is in the sales department, but Jamie's going to help with messaging because he writes clever sales messages. Maybe, we've got a couple of blog articles to write. Well, that's going to be either the CEO or the solutions engineer because whatever. And so execution and who does what and the rules and the workflows, they're usually an afterthought. And after the plan has been quote unquote finalized, people realize that this isn't detailed enough, it's not realistic, and it's not grounded in reality. So all these three things. So that's when it becomes a nightmare. And that's when the entire plan gets sidelined and people start to do random shit. That's a technical term for it. In other words, random acts of marketing. And you know where that leads to. So don't want to go super deep into this, but it might be worthwhile for you to use this as a checklist when I send these slides around afterwards. Just knowing the buyer requires all of these things like ICP narrowing, jobs to be done. It's a super helpful framework. Please read up on it, get into it, do it. It's very good. It helps a ton. And then you want to be mining the sales calls recordings. Everybody talks about that. Ooh, we've got Gong. We just hook up ChatGPT to Gong and then off it goes and analyzes stuff. Well, guess what? ChatGPT and all the other LLMs are not really good out of the box at analyzing stuff and analyzing large bodies of text. So I had this post the other day that I realized how much hallucination and then misleading these things do. So again, I built a component in our system, a Claude skill, that gets fired whenever we do analysis, and it gives you much more reliable results. And it's a total game changer. And in the meantime, people are dumping pages and hundreds of pages of transcripts and data and everything. And they think that what they're getting back is accurate, but it's not. So I guess in the follow-up email, I'll share that Claude skill with you, or you can just look at one of my recent LinkedIn posts from last week. And I posted the whole thing, and you can just copy paste it, use it as a prompt, use it as a Claude skill, use it as whatever. The second thing, we've touched on this. Again, want to keep moving, but an isolated plan is a dead plan. So when it's not grounded in reality, when it doesn't connect to sales and solution engineering and customer success, when there's misalignment because it's not, we haven't aligned the marketing KPIs with the organizational KPIs, with the sales KPIs, when all of that is out of sync, the plan is just going to get abandoned and the program's not going to work. Bam. How I've been trying to fix this in the past. I realized this a long time ago. So in the beginning, when we would be doing strategy, we did what every other consulting company does, which is create pretty PowerPoint decks. And they were pretty, but they were not actionable. That was the problem. So what we then started doing is using Google Sheets and Google Docs, because in Google Sheets, we would have the dashboards and the numbers and everything else. We would have the strategy and messaging. And so it always came in handy. So then it got used to some extent, at least. So that was the positive side of it. And just right over here, you can see that in my browser, I still have this. We don't use this anymore because we use the new system, but for all the clients that I was currently working with, I had all the strategy documents and the messaging documents and sometimes the whiteboards. They were all just a click away. And so that's how at least I used them. The client's team didn't use them as much, but I used them and our team used them. But, it's still problematic. So we realized if we put a lot of the plans and the actual, scheduling of things into ClickUp or whatever PM tool, use ClickUp, then it's already more trackable in it and it sort of comes alive, which is good. And then AI came around and we're like, ooh, let's look for some awesome platform that does all this and that makes the whole thing come alive. Because that's what I always wanted. I wanted to make strategy come alive. I didn't want it to be a separate thing because I knew that whenever we were building campaigns, doing messaging, writing anything, the best thing to do was to go into the strategy documents and then look at stuff and update stuff that needs to be updated. But really, it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't happening because it's just not a convenient way to do things. So I was super happy to dive into stuff like Copy AI. Copy AI is a great tool, also super expensive, but that was the closest thing to what I thought would be a brain for the entire marketing or go-to-market department. And then on February 4th, you might have heard that Anthropic released a couple of really cool features in Claude, including plugins. And a couple of months before that, they introduced skills and they introduced Cowork, which was a total game changer. It was a total freaking game changer because what we were able to do with this, and I'm soon going to show you this, what we were able to do is put all of our context straight into the system where we actually produce content. And by context, I mean all the buyer research and everything else that we've been using LLMs for. So for good and adequate planning, we would do primary research, which includes going into your systems and your CRM and getting the data out. It includes literally talking to your customers. So not just taking your word on what they say, but actually interviewing 3, 4, 5, 6 of your customers, and then including the learnings and the messaging and the positioning and in the strategy. Then when the really good research models came out that would do deep research, we started using that and then validating and then reading and revalidating it with LLMs, de-bullshitify the research, which isn't always reliable. And so, yeah, that was great. But now everything can live under one roof because the problem was that you had all this context. And when it came time for execution, you would use this context, 100 pages of research and whatnot, in putting together the strategy. But most people will remember 2% of what was there. And then actually it would end up going stale and being dusted on some Google Drive and not making it to the actual execution pieces. The other thing that we built into this system that is based on Claude are rules and instructions. Because again, common scenario, you have a marketing assistant, Susie. Susie's great. She handles some lightweight but often important things. So typically, you might not have time to review every single thing that goes out for a trade show where you spend, $20,000, $40,000 for the booth and everything else. So it's when it comes time to write about your company in the brochure, Susie can handle it. She'll write something, but once you arrive at the conference and the trade show, you look at it and you're like, oh crap, this is off brand. No, that's not, that's our old positioning. And so a bunch of times you'll have people sending out written stuff that is off brand, off messaging, uses old stuff or completely made up stuff that the CEO or the marketer would tear their hairs out for. And because much of the content now gets built and produced inside LLMs, if your team uses Claude and if you have a quote operating system running underneath or around everything that you do in Claude, it's going to have the rules and the validations and the instructions and the workflows that they need to be using. So it's a super awesome way to enforce what you spend all that time coming up with and planning. So that's another way to keep the strategy alive. The other huge thing is connectors. So when you're running Claude, Code and Claude Cowork. I'm going to show you these systems in a minute. Even if you're not familiar, you can take a quick look. It's super simple. They connect to your tools. So your CRM, your Gmail, your calendar, your project management tool, your Slack, and everything else. So all the context that you need for everyday work and that would be super nice to tap into is right there. Just it's sitting in the background and it's being used actively. Self-learning, again, strategy is supposed to be a dynamic thing that gets updated. So is messaging, so is positioning. So like as you evolve, you want to update how you present yourself. You've got new angles that work. You want to tweak the positioning, tweak the messaging, because the market's changing, everything's changing. So whenever something new works or you found a better way to do something, then you just tell Claude Code, hey, update this process for me based on what we just did. Or now a new messaging angle that works is X and not Y. So update that in our documentation, and it's going to do a great job at updating it. The other thing is the human in the loop, because everybody's freaked out about, AI can give me so much crap. And we just don't want to rely on AI doing a lot of things on its own. So what we've been able to do is for all of these processes where, for example, we're creating a webinar or we're creating slides or we're creating content in as many places as possible, which is usually after every single step, we want to have a human in the loop process. So I'm going to show you a workflow where we go together with Claude step by step on creating whatever content or collateral. So it's like really good at that. Yeah. So why don't we just pull up Claude and show you a couple of things. Here we go. Let me know, guys, like how many of you actively use Claude? Let me know in the comments here. Who is an active user of Claude? Bam, Alex, yes, great. So this is going to be mostly new, right? Because only Alex is an active user of Claude. So with Claude, what you've got is chat. That's the general stuff that people can access, and it works like every other LLM. The big innovation, yeah, Irene, you use Gemini and GPT. Yes, so what we're talking about cannot at the moment be applied to either Gemini or ChatGPT. I'm sorry to say. And I saw like a full lot of LinkedIn posts about people migrating from those platforms where you are over to Claude because it's just such an ass kicker at the moment. I'm sure this is going to change. So like right now, Claude is the hot kid because it can do this and it has Cowork and it has the skills and everything that I'm about to show you. I'm sure others are going to catch up as well. But right now, like they don't even come close. Plus the quality of their model is also really good. So you have the regular chat, you have Claude Code, which is for coding. It can write code, but it can write other stuff as well. And the big breakthrough here is that Claude Code can talk to your files. It can read your files, it can write your files, and it can connect to other tools. Chat can connect to other tools as well, but with code, you are like super seriously in there. What we've got here is, for example, here we're updating HubSpot context. So let me just show you. Here, I have a workflow, which is a common workflow, which is, hello, please scrape the engagers from my LinkedIn post. And I drop in a URL. And away it goes to scrape it using an Appify scraper, which is a plugin. It's a tool that can scrape LinkedIn engagement safely. And then it gives you a spreadsheet. And so I have this workflow where I say, now that you have these people, it scrapes the 83 engagers from my recent LinkedIn post, and it goes in there and it just lists them for me. But what I usually want to do is I want to enrich these people. So before I update my CRM, I don't want to put these people in my CRM, not everybody, because I don't have their permission and I'm a European guy and GDPR and all that stuff. So I'm not just going to put people from LinkedIn into my CRM. But what I will do is I'll take a look at those people who just engaged and I'll see if any data needs to be updated. So that's literally all I told it. I said, look at these 83 people, see who's in my CRM and see if the data needs to be updated. So it's like, ta-da, out of the 82 enriched contacts, I found 10 people with multiple records, 13 in total. What this told me is Andre in my CRM twice. Arena, I'm going to get to your question. And so, yeah, Andre is in there twice. This guy is in there twice. Peter's in there twice. And so I could just tell it to go ahead and delete one. So that's going to be part of a CRM cleanup workflow where I can actually instruct it to clean up stuff from here. And whoops, I just shut this thing out. I need to get Claude back in here. In the meantime, Irene, I'm going to answer your question. So the professional version of Claude, which is what I'm using, it's the paid version. I'm using the $100 model, by the way, because I need all the tokens for it. So that is not sending any personally identifiable data to, so they say so in the terms and conditions. And so enterprises use this. It's supposed to be enterprise safe in terms of the data safety point of view. So that's something that I believe. And then I just leave it at that. So I'm like 99% confident that this personal data ain't going anywhere, only to HubSpot, but then HubSpot knows. So I'm not loading anybody else up into my CRM because I don't have permission to store their data, but these dudes, they're already in there. So it's going to make a summary of what it is going to change. Is it compliant to share the CRM data to Claude? Is Elvira's question. I wouldn't bet my life on that, Elvira. So I think from a data, I really shouldn't go into this because I'm not a legal attorney, but you are the data handler. And strictly speaking, because this is in the United States, it's probably not 100% compliant to do this. It's probably not 100% GDPR compliant to upload stuff to Claude, even though they're supposedly not using it. So if I were like real strict, then I wouldn't call this compliant. But then again, they hash the data and they take the appropriate measures. So I just leave it at that. And I'm only doing this with my company's data, and I'm okay with that, like with taking that risk. Like I don't see a legal action or suit coming up because of this. Could be wrong, of course. There you have it. That's a long answer. So yeah, we're going to update the CRM data. And I'm just going to go ahead and proceed with these because it summarized what it's going to do. It's going to skip whoever needs to be skipped. And then the connection broke. So I needed to reconnect this thing because it's a part of the thing. Connections sometimes break and you need to go and click a few buttons in order to reconnect HubSpot and re-grant it permissions. So I did that. Woohoo, great, batch 10 of 10 done. And now it's going to do it again. And then I noticed that, woohoo, you forgot to enrich this stuff with company headcount and size, because that's something that I told it to research for me. Previously, we would use something like Clay for this, and we would have a workflow like this inside of Clay. But like that is sort of no longer necessary because we've got this. You know, the connection is going to break sometimes, but I don't mind clicking a few buttons here and there. But it's like I've mapped your CRM data fields and I see that the property that we need is this. So let me update it and bam, there we go. Here's all the data. And yeah, so afterwards, when I tested out this process, we went back and forth. What I usually do is that if this is a repeatable thing, what we're going to do is we're going to create a plugin for this. And a plugin is something that we can just fire off. And then it's going to do everything and take in stuff step by step. And it's going to be even smoother than this. So here it's building the plugin for me. And it's like if you restart it and then you put CRM enrichment and enrich context, then you can just pull in the data and then I'll do what we just did step by step here. So that's the new concept that came out, which is plugins. And I'm going to show you like how this is a game changer. This is Claude Code. And the third option in Claude, which I mentioned, which is relatively new, I think it came out just, at the beginning of this month, like literally February 4th, is Cowork. Now, Cowork is very similar to Code, but Code is primarily for coders. You don't use it just for coding, but it's primarily for coders. But what Cowork does is you can give it access to specific folders on your computer. So this is the growth operating system for Clear, which I wanted to access. And all the stuff that you create and upload in there, which is, context about your company, about a bunch of other things that are important for anything marketing and GTM, they live in here. So they live in this Growth OS for Clear folder. And I've got logos because I'm going to create graphics in here. So I wanted to access my logos. And here's like all the context. So this is where it gets like super fun. check this out. When I said that strategy needs to live together with execution, and the platform, the operating system can store everything, what I meant is that all these documents that start with the ICP and the buyer persona and the customer signals, like what are some signals that we should go after, the buyer personas, which I just said, and then the validation, because we do like validation of everything that it gives us, and all the customer intake questions, the jobs to be done, the positioning, all of this lives in here and is accessible by good old Claude. So whenever I ask it to write something, I can, it's going to tap into those documents. So if you tell this to any other agent in any other context, when you're not inside like a custom GPT or something, it's not going to know. But because it has context, because it knows where to look, they know, or it knew that we're talking about a clear B2B, and then it used our positioning and, specifically for vertical SaaS founders who've hit the growth ceiling, it uses our copywriting skills, and it uses a bunch of skills. If you are using something like a custom GPT or a Gemini gem, you can partially get this function, but I think you'll see that because marketing work is messy, you end up copy pasting stuff into different gems or projects because each one has different contexts and different capabilities. Like a super typical thing would be, people come and they do some research and then they want to create positioning out of that research or write copy based on that research. Well, they have the research in one project or one gem or one whatever, and then they need to copy paste that output or save it as a file and then re-upload it in another place where they have another different set of instructions. Well, you don't have this here because all the instructions and the context live not in one place, they live in separate places, but they can be accessed and invoked and pulled in. So that's the real cool thing. I'm going to show you a couple of other things. Here's something else I tested. So if I ask you to write copy for me, what are some of the rules that you will follow? I'm just testing it. And here, I pulled up Claude.md in skills, and here's your voice, the brand voice. That's a skill. That's something that I taught it, that it can access. It's got the strategic guardrails. It's got the copywriting methodology. It's got other stuff. Speaking of guardrails, super awesome thing. You might remember that I had this thing up here, rules and instructions. One way that plans die is when people start doing random shit and different stuff. And things that aren't in the plan and there are no resources for it, but they're just shiny objects. So I was testing this thing. I told it to, hey, Claude, help me brainstorm how we would launch a Reddit strategy for Clear. So normally it would just, spit out a 9-page plan about how we could go and take part in Reddit and dominate the platform. But it's like, hold up. Your own roadmap explicitly says no new channels until 10K per month. These are just made up numbers here because I haven't uploaded the actual financial targets. So it's using some fake number, but it says Reddit would be channel number 5 and it's not in your priorities. You locked in your channels right now. You need to do LinkedIn 3 times a week, Substack weekly, podcast and stuff, and you're in phase 1. So don't even think about launching Reddit. You can see how this comes in handy when executives tell you to do something. You can say, I went to Claude and I started doing it and it slapped me on the hand. It said, don't you do that because that's not the plan. So if you insist, then we got to change the plan. And then Claude's not going to slap on my hand. Bunch of awesome stuff here. I could go on for ages. Maybe I'll just show you what plugins are actually like. And this is about the workflows. We talked about the connections and tools, the rules and instructions. Yeah, workflows and human in the loop and all research and context living here. So we could start a new task, or I can just show you something that is a process. I'll show you guys how I created this webinar in the landing page. What we did was I came here this morning. I'm like, we got to do a webinar. And I gave it a set of instructions, like how we're going to do it. So we're going to clarify the input, figure out the slides, slide outlines. This is its feedback. So I'm like, create a Cowork task where I'm going to give you input for a webinar and I want you to create the slides, the content, the slides, and I want you to create a landing page for what's to come after the webinar. ooh, I just gave you away something right there. So I wanted it to do all this in a workflow, and I wanted it to check in with me after every single step. So I did this huge brain dump. I hit whisper flow and I started talking about the narrative and everything that we want to talk about today, and ended up with a 4-page document, like a wall of text. And I fed it. And the things like, here's my understanding, then questions at the end. So it gave me the understanding of what we want to do. And, it asks me some things just to make sure that it's going to be on the right track. So yeah, I answer, yes, it's a live webinar or whatever. And I'm like, go ahead. And it's giving me the slides. And then we go back and forth on that. So I was happy with this. So I'm like, let's move on. Cool. Moving on to step 3. And again, I didn't have to upload anything about the ICP. I didn't have to talk about the company. I didn't have to talk about the offering. I didn't have to talk about anything other than what I want the webinar to be. So I didn't need to upload stuff from here and there to feed it context and then forget to say that. I didn't have to tell it the tone of voice that I wanted to use, because all that is sitting inside. So yeah, we go back and forth. It's giving me slides, and I'm like, for slide 15, do something different and rename the slides. So there's a lot of back and forth here. And once we're good with it, 3 or 4 rounds of back and forth, I'm like, use the design skill and build a thing for me. And voila, Claude used our brand guidelines and gave me half ugly slides, the stuff that you see. Now, I ended up tweaking a lot of this. Well, not that much. I tweak 10 or 15%, but it gave me this. And with this process, it saved me half a day. But I wasn't about to be done, because I'm like, after the webinar, if people want to work with me on this, we're going to give them an offer, and we're going to sweeten it up for them. And we want to put this whole thing on a landing page. So create the landing page for me. And the landing page, it did create. And I'm going to show it to you in a while. But it's mind blowing. And then I did what I did at the end of every single session, where I'm like, we're going to have other webinars. We're going to have other landing pages. I'm going to want to give you a brain dump, and I want you to do this again in the future with a different topic. So save this as a plugin. Create the plugin, save it for me. And yeah, so it's got commands, it's got, instructions, it's got context, it's got everything. And now it's a plugin. So whenever I go in here and I type this, which is /webinar, so you go in here and then you type /, and then you can access commands, you can access the plugins, which are essentially the workflows. And then you can choose the webinar landing page engine thingy, and then go to the first step and then have it fire off. It's super cool. And then it's just going to take off. Oh, I could go on about this, but I don't want to keep you waiting for so long. So really, I think the reason I'm so freaking excited is because I see the strategy becoming a live thing and becoming a part of everyday stuff. Because provided that you're like most marketers and business people and salespeople out there, you probably use these things for brainstorming and writing stuff and creating stuff and analyzing stuff. And if that's true, and if you have this layer, this operating system, and you use Claude, everything's in one place, and it acts as a true operating system. So, you're going to keep people on message. Everything's going to be rooted in research. You can rerun the research whenever you want to. So if you have the research process, the workflow, the validation, the debullshitifier, and everything that makes a good research, you can choose to rerun that every 6 months or a year or whatever. And so it's just gonna, keep on being alive, and it's gonna be great. So the strategy evolves, and your CRM gets better. It's gonna get cleaner, because it's gonna be so easy to update it. And you'll sleep better and probably lose weight as well. Because what I wanted to come back to is what we talked about at the beginning, because really the death of growth and marketing is, especially with small marketing teams, is random acts of marketing, right? Big teams fall into this as well, but with especially small teams, it's this forever cycle. It's like, ooh, we got to do marketing. And then you don't do a good job of planning. You have shaky foundations. So you start doing random stuff, marketing based on vibes, and then you get ambiguous results. And then the boss is like, let's try something else, or let's kill this whole thing altogether. And then let's just kill marketing and put it back in the sales support category, and put it back in the seats and the kids table. Let them just create pretty stuff, write blog posts, and that's it. And then they see the competitors doing like really good stuff after a couple of months, and they're like, we got to crack the code. Come on, guys. Now, this time we're really going to crack the code. Last time the agency was stupid, the hire was stupid, the process was wrong, the tools were wrong, we didn't have AI, so we got to crack the code. We got to do it. And then the whole thing starts over and over again. Yeah. So I think this is the alternative, and what's killing so many companies. And it's so sad to see. But now that you have a platform like this, which is like easy to build once you know how to build good strategy, and once you know what good looks like, it's real awesome. So what I hinted at is that this is something that we're launching. The methodology is 7 years old and has been constantly evolving. So what makes a good plan and how to execute and workflows and guardrails and all that stuff, like that's 7 years in the making, 27 deep dives, a bunch of clients, 2 of them on the FT 1000 list. So the system is old. The technology, the Claude layer is new, but it was super fast to set up for Clear because we had everything in place. We had the foundations in place, and we could just load it up. So if you're a company where you like lack clarity, where there's like too many options and it's too confusing, and you don't know if you should do outbound or webinars or any of the 97 things that might make sense, and you really need a good plan, and you want this thing built in Claude, I'm happy to help you. So if like you fit our ICP profile, and provided you're not a type of company we don't work with, then I'm super happy to call with you and see if this is something that is worthwhile for the both of us. I got a landing page, which Claude built for me, what I mentioned, which is clearb2bteam.com. I'm going to drop this in the chat. And if you go there, you're going to see a fancy ass landing page that Claude's built for me. Is that linked? It's not even linked. There we go. So if you click that, you see what the whole thing is about, the deliverables and whatnot. And yeah, if it makes sense for you, let's talk. No obligations. Not really going to pitch you, but you can ask your questions and we can see what this would do for you. And now I'll get on to questions. And I see Irene had a question. What type of file format can it read? It can read a lot of things. So as you can see, I've uploaded images here. You can do PDFs, but what LLMs really love is Markdown. Markdown looks like this. This is the buyer journey matrix, something that we do. So this is Markdown, and Markdown basically ends up being formatted text when you put it here. So whenever Claude gives you something, or any LLM, it's usually in Markdown format, which is like this. So when you take all these dashes and whatnot, all this stuff, and you paste it into a document or whatever, it's going to be formatted like this. And that's what it likes a lot because, and this is how skills work, these files, when formatted properly, this isn't a skill, but I'll show you what a skill file looks like. These skills are like these capabilities and context that it pulls, like for example, a copywriting skill. And I'm going to show you what one of those things look like, because they're also Markdown files. But what's super important about them is right here, up here. See, in the description, it's going to have a name and it's going to have a description. And whenever you put a request to Claude, it's going to look at what skills it can invoke, or it should invoke for that. And it's going to look at this description. And so whenever it's about writing copy, then it's going to invoke this skill. You see, it says, use this skill when writing any customer-facing content, sales materials, marketing emails, whatnot. So Claude's going to read that, and it's like, oh, so we're writing copy. We're going to follow this process over here. So that's what it does. What's the main difference? This is David's question. What's the main difference between skills and plugins? Great question. You knew I was going to say great question, right? But it isn't an easy distinction. But think of it this way. Plugins, think of plugins as workflows or processes, as dialogues of getting stuff done. So for example, we now have, go in here and start a new chat or a new task. So when I invoke a plugin, that plugin looks like this. The plugin is going to start the workflow. The plugin has the information about the workflow, and the skills are going to help build the specific tasks. So let's say we want to build a webinar. So I just launched this plugin, and it's like, woohoo, give me your brain dump, which is what it's supposed to be doing. I'm ready, brain dump. So let's do a webinar on the relationship between mental stress and sales performance. And yeah, just give me a couple of slides, shouldn't be too long. And the end goal is to get people to relax so that they can sell better. Just totally made that up. And this is how you invoke the plugin. And now it's going to look at all the relevant skills when building this whole thing. So for example, like a webinar or a PowerPoint building thing is a skill. And that's what it's going to invoke when we get to it. But I'm glad you asked this question, because then I can show you like this really cool thing. And I don't know where ChatGPT is with this, but it knows what to do and it knows what question to ask. See, because it's got context. Your usual ICP, or is it going to be a broader sales audience? And then it's going to have a dialogue with me, right? A second question, because it's got 3 questions. Should this be, yeah, whatever, brand it with clear, and yeah, make it 3 to 5 slides. Woohoo. So now it's going to go on to step 2, because I've given it instructions here. You can see the folder instructions, and that's what it's going to follow. So it's going to go on to creating the slides and whatever and whatnot. Does that answer the question? Yes. You guys, time is almost up. We're probably not going to wait for this thing to build the workflow, but you see it now. So it asked me a couple of clarifying questions with some really smart questions that are needed. And it's grabbing context from a million places. And I'm pretty confident it's going to do well, because it's going to, yeah, it's just working. And fail to install packages. It's pretty transparent. Like sometimes it fails and now it retries. Now let me read this. Now I have all the info I need. Title slide, you see how it's working, and it's invoking scripts and it's building the slides. Well, the copy, first of all. So ladies and gentlemen, that is it. I'm going to send you the slides and email, maybe the recording as well. Who knows? And, it was great to have you. Thanks for your questions. And I'm sure we'll do another thing that is further along the lines of this, because this is changing so freaking rapidly. As I told you, like the only reason we're able to do this today is because of the features that came out 22 days ago, literally. And in those 22 days, I had to build stuff and test it and be up at 2 a.m. in the morning. And it's a crazy ride. It's super awesome. And I just hope to be able to implement this in as many places as possible. So with that, thank you so much for taking part. Have a great evening, afternoon, morning, wherever. And I will see you later. Bye.